have enjoyed the benefits of nuclear-generated electricity for more than 35 years. Reactors at 3 nuclear generating stations in Ontario produce more than half of the province's electricity. A single reactor currently being refurbished supplies New Brunswick with 30% of its power, and another meets 2.5% of Quebec's electricity needs. Hello, I'm Stephanie Brochard. Today I would like to speak to you about Canada's plan for the long-term management of the used fuel, which is produced when nuclear electricity is generated. All of Canada's used nuclear fuel is fully accounted for and safely managed in facilities licensed by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. Presently, it is stored at the nuclear stations where it is generated. If Canada's entire current inventory of 2 million used fuel bundles could be stacked end-to-end like cordwood, it would fit into 6 NHL-sized hockey rinks, from the ice surface to the top of the boards. When a used fuel bundle is removed from a reactor, it is highly radioactive and must be carefully managed for a very long time, essentially indefinitely. First, the bundles are placed in water-filled pools where they are cooled and their radioactivity is reduced over time. Then, after 7 to 10 years, they are transferred to dry storage in purpose-built dry storage containers, concrete vaults, or silos. These licensed and regulated storage facilities are considered interim and are not meant to be permanent. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization was established by Canada's nuclear electricity generators in 2002, following passage of the Nuclear Fuel Waste Act by the federal government. The legislation required the NWMO to conduct a study consulting Canadians on a national scope, and in particular Aboriginal people, to develop an approach for the long-term care of the used nuclear fuel following its current interim storage. Over 3 years, we engaged thousands of citizens and specialists on the values and objectives that they believe are important in decision-making about nuclear fuel waste. What emerged from this dialogue is an approach we call adaptive phased management. It was selected by the Government of Canada in June 2007. Now, the NWMO is responsible for implementing it. Ken Nash is the organization's president.
Over the course of our study, we heard a wide range and sometimes conflicting views. However, Canadians consistently told us that safety and security are paramount. And we must take action now and not simply pass this problem to a future generation. Adaptive phase management responds to these concerns. The technical method of monitored isolation in a deep geologic formation is consistent with other leading countries, Sweden, Finland and France. What is uniquely Canadian is how we will get there, and this includes meaningful engagement of Canadians at every step along the way.
Adaptive phased management is both a technical method and a management system. Technically, its endpoint is the containment and isolation of used nuclear fuel in a deep repository in a suitable rock formation. The used fuel will remain monitored and retrievable for an extended period of time, and the repository will be flexible in its design to benefit from new learning provided by an ongoing technical and social research program. Just as important as the technical method is the management system. Adaptive phased management will be implemented through a phased process of collaboration involving citizens in decision-making at each stage. It will be adaptable and responsive to new learning and evolving societal priorities. The implementation process will be open, inclusive, and transparent. And the NWMO will be seeking an informed and willing community to host the centralized facility. While not ruling out other interested communities, public engagement for selecting a site will be focused in the 4 nuclear provinces of Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, and Saskatchewan. Building and operating a deep geological repository in an informed and willing community will be a significant undertaking extending over many decades. Although surface buildings to receive and package the used fuel will use only a small portion of the total site, the project will require about 600 dedicated hectares. That's a landmass 2 by 3 kilometers. The underground repository will be constructed at a depth of 500 to 1,000 meters, depending on the geology of the actual site. It will take up space about 1/3 the size of the surface land, depending on a number of factors, including how many fuel bundles will be managed. The radioactive material will be contained through multiple engineered and natural barriers, beginning with the ceramic fuel pellets themselves, which are insoluble in deep groundwater. The pellets are sheathed in zircaloy pencils, which are corrosion resistant and which will be placed in copper and steel containers with a 100,000-year design life, manufactured to withstand glaciations and protect against oxidation. A network of horizontal tunnels will provide access to rooms excavated in stable rock, where the durable containers will be placed in boreholes drilled into the floor. The copper and steel containers will be sealed and further protected by a barrier of swelling bentonite clay. The final and principal barrier between the used fuel and the surface environment will be the surrounding host rock. Adaptive phased management provides for the used fuel to be monitored for an extended period to confirm the long-term safety and performance of the repository system. And it will remain retrievable until a future generation decides to backfill and seal off access to the repository. After the facility is decommissioned, surface buildings can be removed and the site returned to greenfield conditions. When the NWMO asked what a long-term nuclear fuel waste management approach must achieve, Canadians were in absolute agreement. Safety and security for people and the environment, now and in the future, is the paramount objective. Meeting this imperative and other goals of adaptive phased management will require an ongoing social and technical research program to ensure that the approach benefits from the best leading-edge innovation developed in Canada and internationally. Frank King heads the NWMO Technical Research Program.
Construction and operation of a deep geological repository will be a multi-billion-dollar, high-technology project that will provide skilled employment for hundreds of people over many decades. It will have a significant impact on any community which hosts it. We're building the foundation of technical knowledge now that will be needed to support locating, building, and operating the repository. We've begun growing our technical team and at the same time furthering our extensive relationships with the university and expert consulting communities in Canada. We're also active in joint research and development projects with several international radioactive waste management programs. Canadians expect the best knowledge available to be applied to the work we are doing.
The NWMO Technical Research Program is focused on geoscience, safety assessment, and engineering technology development. The organization has more than 50 contracts with leading Canadian universities and specialist consultancies. It collaborates with other national nuclear waste management programs and is active in joint research and development programs in Sweden, Finland, Switzerland, and France. Each year, the program will be reviewed by an international group of independent technical specialists. There are many social and ethical issues and concerns associated with used nuclear fuel management. That is why social research and public engagement are essential to the NWMO's work. Canadians have an expectation that setting direction and making decisions as adaptive phased management is implemented will be a process of collaboration, dialogue, and engagement. The NWMO is committed to reaching out, seeking input and perspectives from interested individuals, community and municipal groups, federal and provincial bodies, specialists in science, industry, and non-governmental organizations, as well as youth and faith groups, and all others who might be potentially affected. We recognize the unique status and rights of Aboriginal people and will continue to engage the Elders Forum, which has been established, and their working group, Nagani, as well as other Aboriginal organizations, communities, and leaders. Catherine Shaver is responsible for NWMO's engagement, communication, and social research.
Our success will be defined by our relationships with Canadians. People have a right to be involved in decision-making on important issues like long-term radioactive waste management, especially those who could be most affected. We're working hard to understand their expectations and to provide them with the knowledge and information they need to meaningfully participate in our processes. People need to be confident that their issues and concerns are understood and addressed at every stage as we implement adaptive phased management.
Canadians have been clear that our generation, which benefits from nuclear energy, has an obligation to move forward now with a long-term management plan for the used fuel that is produced. It would be unfair to future generations to wait any longer. Adaptive phased management has a clear endpoint: centralized containment and isolation of used nuclear fuel in a deep geological repository in a suitable rock formation. Getting there will involve a phased work program over many decades. It will be marked by a series of key decision points at which involved citizens, working collaboratively with experts, will consider whether it is safe to move from one step to the next. As we begin to implement adaptive phased management, Canadians have an important decision to make about where we will contain and isolate our used nuclear fuel for the long term. Making this decision requires that we first collaboratively design a process for selecting a site. The process must be grounded in values and objectives Canadians hold important, and it must be open, transparent, fair, and inclusive. The NWMO is committed to seeking an informed and willing community to host a deep geological repository. The site must meet strict, scientifically determined safety requirements. In the interest of fairness, the process for selecting the site should focus on the 4 provinces directly involved in the nuclear fuel cycle. Of course, communities which decide to engage as potential hosts must also have the right to withdraw from the process. We have prepared a discussion document to help begin the dialogue on designing a process for selecting a site for the long-term used nuclear fuel management. The document outlines some possible features of the process, presents a number of objectives and other considerations which might be helpful, and describes some challenges and opportunities identified in other siting processes that may help guide the discussion. The NWMO expects its dialogue on collaboratively developing a siting process to provide guidance on a number of questions, including how communities will be invited to express interest in learning more and how to become involved, what issues need to be addressed and in what sequence, the preliminary criteria for selecting a site, what information and education will be required to support the process, what policies, practices, structures, and other arrangements will be needed, what research needs to be undertaken, and also over what timeframes should siting occur.
We'll be looking for an informed and willing host community. This project will not be imposed on anybody. The project must be in accordance with strict regulatory standards and contribute to the host community's long-term well-being. We intend to work collaboratively in an open and transparent way to develop a plan to find a willing host. And when we have that plan, we'll check back with Canadians to ensure that we've got it right before taking the next step.
The Nuclear Waste Management Organization is continuing its dialogue with interested Canadians. Everyone is welcome to help shape the implementation of adaptive phased management. If you have thoughts on designing the process for selecting a site for long-term used nuclear fuel management, or if you have anything else you would like to say to the NWMO about its work, we want to hear from you. Visit our website, send a letter, or give us a call.